Hi, I'm Glenn Whipp with the Los Angeles Times. We are continuing our Emmy Contenders conversations, and today joining us, the host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Glenn.
Yeah. So we are a mere 18 months away from the election.
I know, it's just tomorrow. It's just tomorrow.
It's right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
We have 18 as of the moment. I don't know. I haven't checked my phone.
Yes.
There could be more now. 18 Democrats running for president. A president that really has never stopped running for re-election.
Yes.
What is The Daily Show's plan for these next 18 months? What do we have in store?
I think The Daily Show's plan is to embrace the fact that we have prepared and really built The Daily Show with Trevor Noah around this election and this idea. From the day Trump was elected, we knew that the story was going to be, how does America now respond to the presidency of Donald Trump? Because there were some who didn't think it would happen. There were some who didn't take it seriously. There were others who just didn't think that voting was worth their time. And now America's been shaken up in a really interesting way. I mean, you're seeing, Republicans voting in a way they've never voted before, and you're seeing Democrats now voting in a way they've never voted before. So I think what's great for The Daily Show is we're in a space where we very early on had a clear idea of what the show was going to be following the presidency of Donald Trump and how that would start to evolve as the election started to kick up.
Did Trump's election give The Daily Show its focus?
I think definitely.
Like for you?
Yeah.
Because you had been hosting for how long at that point?
I would say I'd been hosting maybe for 8 months, yeah,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
a little over that, yeah. I think one thing people take for granted is, satire works best when it has a target, and it's very difficult to fake that target. So when you're living in a world where your everything seems to be going right, it's really difficult to be in a space where you are feigning anger or outrage because there really is no need for
Right.
any. And so it seems like a vestige of a previous time. But once Trump came into office, the show immediately had its relationship with the White House. Not dissimilar to how The Daily Show with Jon Stewart really started its tenure with George Bush.
Yeah.
So in many ways, that's the journey that the show has with the White House, and I think it's an interesting relationship, like Harry Potter has with Voldemort.
Are you hoping? Have you even imagined what it would be like, what The Daily Show would be like if that relationship were to come to an end in November 2020?
I don't think that far ahead, I'll be honest with you. I've always been somebody who thinks in the now, and I think my belief in that idea was made concrete when the election took place in 2016. Because before that, I was swayed back and forth on how well I thought Trump was doing. But oftentimes I was put in my place by people who had observed so many different American elections that they told me, hey, you're not from here. This is not permanent, relax. Trump won't make it to the White House. And I would watch him at debates, and I would watch, I remember like the one debate where Pence disavowed him, and then after the debate, Pence sent a tweet saying, great performance and great display from our future president, and well done. And I was like, wow, this seems like a turning moment for Donald Trump. And so I've realized the campaign is not one single story. It's a journey of little stories that get you to the final ending. And so all I'm doing right now is focusing on what story we're telling our audience every week. What is in the news? How does it apply to you? Which parts offend you and which parts affect you? Because I've realized there's a difference between the two. And I'm just slowly working towards that mountaintop that is the 2020 presidential election.
You've already started. You've interviewed Bernie Sanders a couple of weeks ago. You interviewed Kamala Harris a couple of months ago.
Right.
Do you like doing these interviews? I mean, you have about 20, 30 minutes, maybe 25, 30 minutes full interview online.
Right.
Politicians, we were just talking about hard interviews because they don't like answering questions
Yes.
that they don't like. What's your strategy in going in and talking to these people?
Well, I mean, the core for me is asking a question that I think people would like to know the answer to. Questions that will affect them should this person take power? Every politician is going to come in with their talking points. Every politician has they're selling. They're selling who they are. They're selling themselves. They're trying to get the job. And so what I'm trying to do is ask the questions that the employer, aka the voter, should be asking. And what I try and do is just steadily chip away at the talking points and try and get to the human being behind it, because I think a lot of politicians focus too much on how much they can remember, how many facts they can regurgitate,
right.
and not enough on the message. What are they actually saying? And that's where, hate him or love him, Donald Trump is really good at delivering a message. He may not be good with his words, he may not be good with the English language, but his message is always crystal clear to those who are listening to him.
And part of that, I think, not being good with words and language is part of the appeal, it seems like.
Oh yeah, definitely. He plays into it.
Yeah.
He plays into it, and he plows through any foibles that the rest of us would be stuck up on. He just goes with it, creates a new reality, and that's part of his strength, and that's what people like in him. I think is also a leader who goes, no, there is no wrong, there is no mistake. We just make this a new path.
The pronunciation of origins is now oranges.
Yes, it is.
Because that's.
It is.
And it was. I think you did this, right, where you played that clip, and it was. At one point, he said beginnings, or
right.
He changed. Okay, I can't get this word, and then he went back and went oranges again.
Right. He had a moment where he believed he had it, and he came back and he didn't have it. He genuinely didn't have it. So those are fun moments, and that's what I try and focus on the Daily Show is reminding the audience that those are like fun moments. Those are not moments to get outraged over. Those are not scandals. If you think your president mispronouncing a word is a scandal, then you have way too many issues in your life.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a real thing. That's something we can laugh about, and that's something we can move on. I don't think that's anything that now disqualifies a person to be president. Some people read too much into it. This is another reminder that, no. I think you can look at just what the person is doing in the office and how the administration is conducting themselves, and that gives you enough ammunition to make your decision.
So, you can, as the host of a show on Comedy Central, have fun with some of the just silly, absurd ridiculousness of Donald Trump. But also, you're walking that line. There are things that he's doing that we need to focus on that are concerning. And that's kind of the line that you're either walking or trying to walk on the show, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And, because you're walking a line, it means there are times when people will feel like you've crossed it on either side. Mm-hmm. But that's part of comedy. That's the risk that I take every single day when I make a joke, and I accept that. I've learned that everybody thinks a joke is funny until it hits too close to home. And that's generally how comedy works. And so for me, when I'm processing the information at hand, I have my personal opinion, and then I share opinions with people in the building, my writers, my staff, my producers. Everybody in the building has a say on what we're doing. And, I run a very inclusive building where I do have final say, but I take into account the views and opinions of the people around me. And so when I'm making that show, I try and remind myself, my team, and then the audience that the Daily Show is meant for you to come and have a little moment of light. Mm-hmm. The news has become very alarmist. The news enjoys staying in a place where every day is breaking news. Every single day is a critical story. And so I would like to create a space where people can come in and realize that the world isn't ending every day. It may feel like it is, but it isn't ending every single day. And I think if we can spend more time being in a place where the world isn't ending every day, we can prevent it from ending when maybe it was going to. And so that's what we try and do every day, is just give you the facts, give you our opinion, and we have a team of fact checkers on board who are, not as liberal with the jokes as we would like them to be, but that's why they're there. Mm-hmm. And so they keep us in check.
Keep you honest, yeah.
They keep us honest, and that's how we make the show.
You talked to Stephen Colbert. You interviewed him,
right,
which was great, and sat behind his desk, put him in the chair. And you guys started your shows at roughly the same time. And you asked him, the early reviews weren't particularly good. Did you have any doubts? Did you have any doubts when you started the Daily Show and people were expecting like a fully formed show immediately?
Right.
What was your response to that? What were you thinking inside your head?
Oh, I was plagued by doubts.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the curse of the artist. It doesn't matter what job you're in or what you're doing. In the space of creating, I've never been without doubt. And what I do to try and remedy that is, I think, work with as much preparation as possible. So I work as hard as I can. I try and read up as much as I can. I try and know as much as I can. Because at the end of the day, once it's go time, all your preparation comes to the fore. You forget everything else, and your preparation is what counts. And so for me, that's really what it was all about. Of course I had doubts. I mean, only an idiot would take over from Jon Stewart as the host of The Daily Show. And luckily I was that idiot, And so...
You were the idiot who was afforded that opportunity.
Exactly, And there were many people who turned it down, and that's the reason I got the job, and that's how life works, One of my favorite stories actually was how Will Smith turned down The Matrix, and that's how Keanu Reeves got it. And I wouldn't want anybody else playing that role, so I never looked down on any type of decision that was made because somebody else said no to it. I think most of us are here because somebody said no to somebody else. We're a no to somebody else's yes. And so, and my goal was come in, do your best. Of course you have the doubts, but I've never not had doubts. Because I don't take anything for granted. I don't take stand-up comedy for granted. I don't take writing a book for granted. I don't take doing The Daily Show for granted. So every show I do, I give it my best, and I hope to do another one tomorrow, and I hope to do another one the next day and the day after that.
Yeah. You seem to be, and I don't know when this started. I've been watching The Daily Show forever. And at some point, you, instead of opening the show behind the desk, you came out from, behind the curtain.
Right.
Which was like, what is he doing, But what I, and then there's like camera angles now that show the audience. These are radical things for someone who's been watching the show for, umpteen years.
Right.
But they seem to kind of lean into your energy as a performer.
Well, I realized that the show needs to be an extension of the host. And I say I realized it, but really it was Jon Stewart who told me that. But it took me a while to understand what that meant, I always said that John is my Jewish Yoda. He tells me things and I don't know what they mean until it finally clicks. And so what he told me was the show needs to be an extension of the host. It can only be who you are. And what happened was once we started going on the road, we went to conventions, we covered, the races, and now we were on the road as The Daily Show. We had to find new ways to create The Daily Show. And in searching for new ways, I felt less inhibited when it came to breaking the format.
Right.
Because how do you break what was one of the most lauded shows in American history? Who has the rights? Nobody. And so I was too afraid to do that. But once you go into the field and you're in the world, there is no standard, there is no practice. So you have to create a new thing. And in those journeys, being in Cleveland, being in Philadelphia, I started realizing new aspects of what I would like to bring back into the show at my studio in New York City, and that's started to filter into the DNA of the show, and we've extended that. Now going out to Miami, we did the same thing, and being in Chicago, we did the same thing. And those cities all imprint on The Daily Show a slightly different element of who we are and what we do, because I am a byproduct of my world. I always have been, and so that's what I try and create in the show. And so I am with my audience, and so I want you to see that this is where I am. I don't live at the desk, so I don't want you to find me at the desk. I want you to know that I come to this desk, and just like you, I choose to come and engage in this news and in these stories, and then I leave this space, because that's what I want you to do. I don't want you to live in the news forever. I don't want you to be inundated by fear and consumed by anger and hate. So let's come to the space, let's do it together, and then let's go and remember that we're human beings.
Yeah. How much, I mean, you're doing stand-up right now, it seems like every weekend. I
Right.
don't know, I just went on your website just to look at the dates. What does the stand-up do? You're doing that and then you're coming back to work. How does the stand-up feed what you're doing on The Daily Show?
Well, two parts. One, it is my release. Stand-up is a free form of my ideas and my thoughts and my therapy and my connection to human beings with no restriction whatsoever. So where The Daily Show affords me the ability to be structured and precise, stand-up gives me the ability to be free and completely devoid of all rhyme or reason. Anything can happen and anything does happen. And those two disciplines feed into each other, but they serve very different purposes, which I enjoy. And so that's the first part, is the freeing aspect of it. Just going out on the weekend, enjoying myself, getting out of New York City, because New York never stops. Sundays, Monday, it's all the same. So that's great. And then the second part is seeing America. I really love meeting human beings. I like interacting with people and understanding what makes them tick, who they are, how they live differently, going to parts of the country where you go, oh, this coastal bubble that you live in is not the norm. This is not how everybody thinks. Hearing a different opinion on Trump, from somebody who doesn't wear a MAGA hat, but just comes and says, hey, I support Trump, and this is where I live, and this is who I am, and my state and my location influenced how I voted, and this is how I laugh at a joke, and this is who I am. And somebody who says, I love your comedy, I just don't like your politics. And that's an interesting conversation for me to have with somebody, because I feel like for so many people, we've now started to compartmentalize everything into politics. I hate your politics, so I hate your food and your clothes and your face and your music and your everything. But how do we get back to the place where we say, okay, I will discuss politics with you whilst also affording you the label of human being in my mind? And that's what being on the road has taught me to do, because not everyone who comes to my stand-up shows is a fan of The Daily Show. Some people are there because they love the stand-up. Some people are there because they love the book. And that has really been great for me to take into account in creating the show.
Have you found many people who are fans of the stand-up, but not fans of what's perceived to be the politics of the Daily Show?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely. You must remember, The Daily Show came with it a certain liberal moniker, and a moniker that was defined. So whenever you say something that fits within that paradigm, people will automatically say that, yes, this is what we thought it was. And then if you say something that falls outside of what they believe it should be, then you get lambasted by people, And so that's an interesting journey that you're on, especially when you're learning and fostering and growing a relationship with an audience. And so for myself, the journey has been trying to be as true to what I believe as possible, based on facts and information. I myself have had to recalibrate how I think because of the numbers, the facts, the data, as opposed to just what you've grown up believing.
Sure.
And so that's been really interesting for me to take as on a journey. And so there's many people who say, hey, I love your comedy. I love coming to your comedy show. I laugh with you. We have a good time. I'm not a big fan of The Daily Show because the politics is not my in my vein. And you know what? I appreciate people who can say that.
I feel like the stand-up must help you as an interviewer too, because it makes you present. That's part of being on stage. And so when you're having a conversation with someone, you're actually listening. You know what I'm saying?
I try.
Well, I don't think that's always true in an interviewer or even, a late night. You're always thinking of the next question.
Right.
So what I enjoyed about the interviews with Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris was that you were able to make them laugh. And that takes them out of their whatever spiel they might be going on, lets their guard down and shows they're a little human,
That's what laughter is meant to do, in my opinion. It reminds us of who we are.
Yeah.
You can't fake anything when you are yourself. Your laugh is ugly, your laugh is snorty, your laugh is crass, your laugh is loud, your laugh is giggly, your laugh is whatever. It is who you are, and that's what I love about a laugh. So getting even a presidential candidate to laugh in a moment, I feel like it opens them up. When you genuinely laugh, when it's not a fake thing, it just, you see them come alive. And so like, Kamala, I expected to see her laugh, but Bernie, I genuinely have never seen Bernie laugh. And he just laughed as a person, and he was funny, and he had a few quips of his own, and he didn't take himself too seriously. And I saw a different side of him that I'd never seen before, and I think a lot of people liked seeing that side of him on The Daily Show. And we still talked about policy. It didn't mean now that we only played games or there was no true conversation, but we stayed true to what the show is about, whilst also embracing the human element of who the person is that's applying for the job.
Do you know who's never been seen laughing?
Donald Trump?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I've seen one clip of him laughing. But I've read, and I don't know how true it is, that he doesn't like to laugh in public because he believes it's like a sign of, it's like a weakness thing. It's like how you should be perceived as a leader. And so which is an interesting idea.
Right. How he wants to be perceived as a leader is like when he's giving the State of the Union address and he kind of steps back and does his
chin
up thing.
Yes.
And laughter, as you were just saying, is like an unguarded, we can't control how we sound. It's so he needs to come on your show. You need
I would
to
love
make
that.
him laugh.
Oh, I would love that. I don't think he ever would, but I would take him.
He did, and I mean, he did go on talk shows in 2016.
Right.
He went on Fallon.
Yes, he did.
And Fallon took a lot of grief for that because he took a lot of grief for normalizing Trump.
Right.
Tossing
Playing with his
hair.
hair.
What did you think of the criticism of that?
Well, I understand where people were coming from, but I think in some ways, Jimmy Fallon was criticized for something that American television has done for a long time. And that is, it has blurred the lines between entertainment and politics/news. All these politicians, they go on SNL.
Right.
They go and make jokes and they make sketches and they make skits. And you must remember, for someone who's not from this country, this is wild for me to see. Even the White House Correspondents' Dinner for years,
Right.
I could not understand how the President of the United States could stand on a stage and make jokes about droning people or dropping bombs or waging wars. And it's a very American thing. It's not something that I'm familiar with, and many people around the world are not completely familiar with. And so I think in many ways, people were a little unfair on Jimmy's side because they wanted him to act apart from how everyone was acting. It's not like Donald Trump was a pariah who went to his show and then all of a sudden Jimmy did something. No, the audience cheered while that was happening. People laughed while it was going on. It was the backlash that then became a thing. And so I think the question we have to ask ourselves, everyone, I've had to ask myself at The Daily Show as well, is what are we putting out there? What are we trying to say when we're doing these things? And so, it was funny because when I interviewed President Obama while he was still in office, I'd met with him at the Kennedy Center Awards, and he said to me, he said, Trevor, we're going to do this interview? And I said, yeah, Mr. President, I've been waiting for a long time. When are we doing it? So, well, you know what? I'll come on the show, but you promised me. No games, all right? We're going to talk. Policy, facts, all right? I don't want to ride a bicycle. I don't want to send tweets. We're going to talk. And in that moment, I understood what he was saying. He was like, let's get back to what my job is.
Sure.
And so I appreciated that moment because he was affording us the respect of, hey, it's The Daily Show. Let's do what The Daily Show is good at doing. Mm-hmm. But also he reminded me to never forget that although there is an element of entertainment attached to it, you are still dealing with something that is really serious. And so I try and find that balance in everything that we do.
It's interesting to read like polls now for this election that's around the corner.
I hate polls.
Yeah.
I hate them and I don't trust them. I don't understand why polls are even public, I'll be honest.
Should I just withdraw the question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I think public polls should be legal, I'll be honest with you.
I'll just say polls, but I've also had conversations with people too, where they don't care about ideology.
Yes.
They just want someone who can win the election.
Right.
So, you're talking about coming on The Daily Show and talking about ideas.
Yes.
But a lot of people just don't care. They want a person, they want a personality that can be electable. So it's interesting to just like how do you draw that balance between having those moments where you have sort of a real
Yes.
come through, the real person come through, but also talking about ideas and what their message is and what their idea is for leading the United States.
Well, I don't believe that one should exclude the other.
Right.
I don't think you should be trying to be a good human being to beat Donald Trump. If you are a good human being, that should come through. So if you are unable to access your human side whilst talking about policy, then are you the right person for the job? And I think out of the 18 people who are running as we speak, surely there's at least one who can do that. So for myself, I'm not a big fan of absolutes. I enjoy swimming in a pond of nuance. It's not as much fun, but it's where I think there is more texture, and so I'm not a big fan of people saying I don't care who it is as long as they can beat Trump. I think that's a dangerous place to be in, because swapping populism for populism doesn't necessarily move you forward. You may find yourself in a better yet worse position. So I understand what people are saying. I think what they're really saying is, most people are saying is, I don't care which of these Democrats wins as long as it's someone who can beat Trump. And I get that. And to be honest, people's policies aren't that differing. I mean, from the 2016 campaign to now, everyone's signing up for Medicare for all. Everyone's signing up for some version of the Green New Deal. Everyone seems to be within the same bubble of policies. So really you're picking, it's almost like you're at one car dealership and there's just a slight variation on the type of cars.
That's why I think people will go on The Daily Show, because they want to differentiate themselves somehow.
Right, everyone will try.
Everyone will try. You've got 16 more candidates to interview, don't you?
I don't know if we'll get that far.
Yeah. What do you have downtime?
I do.
mean, you're doing the stand-up weekends. You go back to work.
Which is my downtime, by the way.
Okay, that's your downtime.
Yeah, people don't think of it like that, but it is.
You also have a podcast that's starting next week.
Yes, I do.
Is it a weekly podcast?
It's going to be a weekly podcast.
Okay, I just wondered how. So weekly podcast starting next week.
Yes.
Why are you starting a podcast in addition to all these other things?
Well, the podcast is in a way a byproduct of the world that I live in. So Daily Show exists in a space where I consume news on the daily and give you, the viewer, an opinion based on what has happened. And then tomorrow we move on, and sometimes it evolves, but that's generally how the news works. I mean, at the LA Times, you've become all too familiar with this. When I do my stand-up, it's ideas that can be years old or evergreen. It doesn't even have to be attached to time itself.
Yeah.
What I realized, though, was there was a space that I was existing in with my friends and colleagues and there's people close to me where we would have conversations about something that happened that wasn't in the news but wasn't completely out of our memories. And we'd say, hey, remember that story? Remember that thing that happened a week ago? What did you make of it? And we were able to have conversations that were more, I guess, they were more well-rounded. They were conversations where we could engage without the emotion of what had just happened. And a lot of the time, I feel that's what happens is when something happens in the moment, you may not be in the best position to discuss the ideas in and around what caused it to happen.
That's Twitter.
Exactly. What's your hot take?
Right.
And I wanted to take a step away from a hot take and say, on second thought, how do we feel about this? On second thought, how do we process that emotion and that information now that we've had a moment to breathe? And so that's what the podcast is all about. It's called On Second Thought for that reason. It's because I just want to take a moment to look back at something that's happened a week ago, 5 days ago, and just try and process through that information, from a different from a different filter, through a different lens, to try and get to a different place of understanding.
Well, another thing for us to subscribe to, which is great. And congratulations on that. And
Thank you so much.
congratulations on, I mean, when you do have downtime, you go home to South Africa.
I do, yeah.
You create one of the best Daily Show episodes ever.
Thank you. Yeah, that was fun.
The book is out, paperback, young readers edition. Still on bestseller lists. So many ways to enjoy you.
Thank you so
And this
much.
has been
And here's
wonderful.
another one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
and
you.
now we have the LA Times interview. So thank you for adding to that.
Thank you. And for more of these Emmy conversations, please go to latimes.com. Thanks for watching.